I sit cross-legged on my living room floor, surrounded by stacks of tenant maintenance requests. Mrs. Peterson needs her leaky faucet repaired before the weekend. The Johnsons from the third floor report their heater making odd noises. Mr. Garcia is asking for approval to install a ceiling fan. This is how I spend my Friday night, sorting through other people's problems while sipping lukewarm coffee. Then the doorbell rings. I glance at my watch. 7:15 p.m. No one drops by unannounced, especially not on a Friday. When I open the door, my sister Valerie stands there, wearing a smile that doesn't quite reach her eyes. Her camel-colored coat probably costs more than 3 months of my rent. "Miranda," she says, her voice light but brittle, like cracking glass. "May I come in?" Before I can respond, she steps past me, her designer heels clicking against the hardwood. Her gaze sweeps over my modest living room. The stack of papers, the half-empty coffee mug, the couch draped with the throw blanket Grandma Eleanor crocheted years ago. "Working on a Friday night?" she says. "You always were the dedicated one." It sounds less like admiration and more like criticism. She pulls an envelope from her sleek leather portfolio. "I came to deliver this personally, as a courtesy." The paper feels unusually heavy in my hands. I unfold it, scanning the contents until my eyes lock on numbers that make no sense. "This is a rent increase notice," I say slowly. "From $23.50 to $7,000? "Fair market value, little sister," she replies smoothly. "Business is business." Valerie adjusts her gold Cartier watch, its face catching the light. "The family voted last weekend. We're repositioning all the properties for maximum return, last weekend, at Mom and Dad's." My mind flashes back. 14 relatives gathered around the dining table. When I mentioned Riverside Apartments, everyone looked away. Mom changed the subject. Dad poured more wine. My cousins exchanged quick, silent glances. They had already decided. Already known, my pulse quickens. My mouth feels dry. I fold the notice carefully, trying to steady my hands. When they let her silence me, they never expected that same silence to become my weapon. The thought rises quietly within me, firm and unshaken. "You can't be serious," I repeat, more controlled this time. "I've managed this building since Grandma Eleanor passed. I've kept the tenants happy, handled repairs, collected rent, for which the family has compensated you," Valerie interrupts. But sentiment doesn't pay dividends. A memory surfaces, Christmas morning when I was 12. Valerie unwrapped a pearl necklace while I received a clearance rack sweater. My parents' faces glowed with pride for her. "Your sister knows what she wants," they said later. "She's protecting the family's interests." That same day, Grandma Eleanor took my hand and whispered, "Your sister seeks power. You seek connection. Remember which one builds a legacy." Now, studying Valerie, her polished nails, the gold watch, the embossed logo on her portfolio, I start piecing it together. 3 weeks after her firm lost the Westridge case, 2 months after she bought her new Oakwood Hills home, a part of me wants to plead, to remind her of who we were. But I know it won't matter. "I'll need to review this with my attorney before responding," I say. My tone firm, surprising even myself. Valerie laughs softly, the sound sharp enough to slice through the air. What lawyer would bother contesting this? The property is legally mine. The transfer papers were finalized last month. My stomach sinks. This isn't just about an apartment, it's about my home, my pride, and my final connection to Grandma Eleanor. It's also about Mrs. Simmons in 2B, who lives on Social Security and bakes cookies for everyone every Christmas, and Mr. Peterson, who spent 4 decades here and could name every creaking floorboard. Do Mom and Dad know about this? I ask, though I already suspect the answer. "Of course," Valerie says, glancing at her watch. "Your sister manages all the family assets now." She mimics our father's confident tone. She knows what she's doing. The smile on her face isn't about profit. It's about triumph, about finally cutting me off from Grandma Eleanor's legacy. My phone vibrates. A message from Mrs. Simmons. "Come down for tea, dear." You look upset. I saw Valerie arrive. Mrs. Simmons has lived here for 40 years. She was Grandma Eleanor's closest friend before she became mine, and from her window overlooking the front entrance, she misses nothing. Valerie notices the text. "The tenants aren't your responsibility anymore," she says, collecting her portfolio. "I'll handle communication from now on." "Mrs. Simmons has lived here since before we were born," I say. "Grandfather clauses are for sentimental fools," Valerie replies. The market doesn't care about cookies or outdated rent agreements. Grandfather, Mrs. Simmons appears in the doorway, her silver hair pinned neatly, her usual cardigan buttoned, and a small tray with her favorite teapot in hand. "I thought we could use some chamomile," she says, stepping in without waiting for permission. At 72, she's earned that right. Valerie's polite dismissal glances off her like rain against glass. "Mrs. Simmons," Valerie says smoothly, "we were just discussing business." "I heard," Mrs. Simmons replies, setting down the tray. She straightens, all 5'2" of quiet authority. "I knew your grandmother for 50 years, Valerie. What would Eleanor say about this?" For a split second, Valerie's mask falters. Then she recovers, adjusts her coat, and moves toward the door. 30 days notice, Miranda. It's all perfectly legal." When the door shuts, Mrs. Simmons calmly pours 2 cups of tea. "Some battles," she says, handing me one, "require preparation, not instant retaliation. Eleanor dealt with people like her all her life. She taught me how." The gentle aroma of chamomile helps steady me. A thought surfaces through the haze of anger and disbelief. "I need to look through Grandma's old papers," I say. Mrs. Simmons smiles knowingly. "I was hoping you'd think of that." I look down at the cardboard box on my living room floor, my throat tight with grief and determination. 2 days after Valerie's ultimatum, I finally gathered the courage to open Grandma Eleanor's financial records from storage. Dust floats in the sunlight as I lift the first folder. The pages inside tell a story I never expected. Bank statements, property deeds, email printouts. Each document uncovers another layer of Valerie's calculated dismantling of Eleanor's legacy. An email from Valerie to a luxury development company catches my attention. Once we obtain full control of Riverside, we can begin converting it into premium condominiums. Projected return on investment 300% within 18 months. My hands tremble. The email is dated only 2 weeks after Eleanor's funeral. Another folder holds minutes from a family trust meeting 6 years ago. Valerie had persuaded our parents to sell the lake house, the one Eleanor had specifically said she wanted me to inherit someday. Market conditions favor immediate liquidation, Valerie had insisted. My parents agreed without hesitation. For the family's financial stability, my father said when I questioned the choice, the same justification. Echoed throughout every document, our modest inheritance my cousin Thomas received instead of the antique shop Eleanor promised him, the vacation home in, Maine that disappeared into family investments. Under Valerie's control, the retirement funds meant for long-term family employees, restructured for company expansion, again overseen by Valerie. Mrs. Simmons knocks softly before stepping in, carrying a tray of sandwiches and tea. Her eyes widen at the papers surrounding me. "I found rent increase notices for all the senior tenants," I say quietly. "She's targeting everyone, not just me. Mr. Peterson's rent will rise to $5,800. Mrs. Daniels, $6,000. And you?" $4,500. "Don't worry about me," Mrs. Simmons replies, setting down the tray. "What else did you find?" I hold up a handwritten note in Eleanor's familiar script. Riverside must remain in the family. The legacy must be protected. The paper feels warm, almost alive in my hands, as if she's speaking to me from beyond. "She knew," I whisper. Eleanor knew exactly what Valerie would attempt. While Mrs. Simmons pours the tea, I continue sifting through folders. A pattern takes shape. Valerie had been positioning herself long before Eleanor fell ill. Small fund transfers. Legal revisions. Gradual consolidation of authority while everyone else remained unaware. "Your grandmother wasn't naive," Mrs. Simmons says, offering me a steaming cup. She watched Valerie closely for years. The realization hits me hard. Eleanor hadn't just been kind when she asked me to help with her financial records during her final months. She was preparing me. Training me. Those weekends spent reviewing property expenses, those afternoons learning about tax assessments. She had been equipping me for this moment. I sink back into the couch, my world shifting on its axis. My parents never saw me as Valerie's equal, did they? I ask. Mrs. Simmons' silence says enough. Every family gathering replays differently now. The Christmas dinners, where my law school plans were brushed aside while Valerie's new partnership earned applause. The summer barbecues, where my property management certification drew a polite nod. But Valerie's minor courtroom win was toasted with champagne. The Thanksgiving, when I shared news of my promotion to building manager, only for my mother to switch the topic to, Valerie's new Mercedes. I've been so blind. I murmur. Not blind, Mrs. Simmons corrects gently. Just trusting. There's a shift. I sit up straighter, carefully arranging the papers into new stacks, no longer chronological but intentional. Documents showing financial misconduct, tenant mistreatment, property transfers, and ownership trails. She always moves when people are vulnerable, I say, recognizing Valerie's pattern. She acted after Eleanor's death, after Thomas's divorce, after the Petersons' medical crisis. Mrs. Simmons nods. Predators go after the wounded. But being a lawyer doesn't make her untouchable, I add, my thoughts becoming focused. It just means I have to be smarter. The phone rings. Valerie's name flashes across the screen. You have 1 week to decide, she says flatly when I answer. I'm being generous by giving you any notice at all. The market won't wait. I'll need more time to review everything, I reply, my voice steadier than I feel. There's nothing to review, she snaps. The decision's final. Mom and Dad agree. Almost immediately, my phone buzzes with a text from my mother. Your sister has carried this family financially for years. We owe her. After the call ends, I notice a legal brief in one of the folders, one of Valerie's recent high-profile losses. Another folder contains bank notices requesting mortgage extensions on her new house in Oakwood Hills, plus credit card statements with growing balances, and meeting notes from her firm mentioning pressure to generate more revenue. This isn't just greed, I realize aloud. It's desperation. Mrs. Simmons studies the papers, which makes her dangerous. A final text from my father confirms it. Family meeting next Sunday to finalize arrangements. Be there. A week, I mutter. She's giving me a week before the axe falls. Mrs. Simmons stands abruptly. You need Lawrence Carver. Who? Eleanor's attorney, her personal one, not the family firm. He retired last year but still consults. Eleanor trusted him completely. While Mrs. Simmons calls him. I keep sorting documents, financial records, tenant statements about Eleanor's housing promises, and detailed maintenance logs I've kept since managing the property. By the time she returns, 3 boxes of organized evidence sit ready. Lawrence will see us tomorrow morning, she announces. He said he's been expecting our call. Expecting it? I repeat. Mrs. Simmons points to a sealed envelope I haven't yet opened. The handwriting reads, For Miranda, when the time comes. With trembling hands, I break the seal and unfold a letter written in Eleanor's script. When the time comes, Lawrence has everything you need. Remember what I told you. Your sister seeks power. You seek connection, and connection will always outlast power. For the first time in days, I feel something beyond anger or shock, a quiet certainty settling inside me. This isn't about emotions anymore, I say, closing the folder. It's about facts. Mrs. Simmons smiles, eyes fierce. Eleanor would be proud. Tomorrow we meet Lawrence Carver. Tomorrow we start fighting back. On Monday afternoon, I sit in Lawrence Carver's wood-paneled office, papers spread across his mahogany desk. Afternoon light filters through the blinds, casting striped shadows over documents that have just changed my understanding of the last 3 years. Say it again, I whisper. Tracing the embossed seal on a deed. Carver adjusts his wire-rimmed glasses, his face calm but firm. Your grandmother left you $20,000 in a private trust 3 years ago. With that, you created Stonebridge Holdings, LLC, with my assistance, of course. Stonebridge then purchased Riverside Apartments from the family trust. I pick up the mortgage documents, my own signature staring back at me. The memory returns in fragments. Grandma. Eleanor asking me to sign a few contingency documents while she was still clear-minded. I trusted her completely and never thought to question it. For years, Valerie has been collecting rent and managing everything as if she owned the building. Carver's eyes glint with a mix of irony and satisfaction. Ms. Wells Harrison never verified the ownership transfer after your grandmother passed, he says. She simply took over. The realization hits me in waves. So all this time I've been the real owner? Exactly, Carver replies. Your grandmother appointed you as manager of Stonebridge Holdings. Legally, you've owned Riverside Apartments for 3 years, while your sister has merely acted as an unauthorized property manager. A laugh escapes me unexpectedly. Grandma Eleanor had planned this meticulously. She was a strategic woman, Carver adds, sliding a sealed envelope toward me. Eleanor left this for you when the time was right. Inside is a single page, her graceful handwriting unmistakable. Don't chase her approval. Build your own ground. My heart races as the message sinks in. This isn't just leverage, it's purpose. Valerie's called a family meeting for Sunday, I say, gathering the documents. She plans to evict tenants for late rent. Carver glances at his watch. Then we'll be there. The week passes in preparation for what's ahead. This time, I'm not just defending property. I'm protecting my grandmother's vision and my legacy. On Sunday, the dining room of my parents' Tudor-style home feels heavy with history. 14 relatives sit around the gleaming table that has witnessed countless family milestones and betrayals. Crystal glasses sparkle under the chandelier, and Mother's silver dishes line the sideboard. Valerie stands at the head of the table, legal papers spread before her like tools of battle. Her camel blazer matches her polished tone as she speaks. As I was saying, she continues, Tenant 3B, Mrs. Peterson, is 3 days late again. I've prepared an eviction notice. She lifts the document like a prize. Business is business. Beside me sits Mrs. Simmons, my guest and quiet ally. My parents' discomfort is obvious. They know she sees beyond their practiced charm. I've reviewed Riverside's finances, Valerie goes on. We're losing money on maintenance for those old units. Once we remove the unreliable tenants, we can renovate to attract better ones. Mother nods approvingly. It must be hard making these decisions, dear. I used to stay silent, swallowing my doubts. But not today. The truth gives me strength. Actually, I say, my voice steady, I've reviewed those records too, with my attorney. The room falls silent. Valerie's confident smile falters. What attorney? Right then the doorbell rings. Perfect timing, thanks to Mrs. Simmons's discreet text. My father gets up to answer it, returning moments later with Lawrence Carver. Portfolio in hand, Mother's expression changes immediately. She knows who he is. Everyone, I announce evenly. This is Lawrence Carver, legal counsel for Stonebridge Holdings. LLC, Valerie's composure shatters. What's going on, Miranda? Carver calmly sets his portfolio on the table and begins laying out the documents. Every motion deliberate and precise. I represent Ms. Wells in her capacity as the owner and manager of Stonebridge Holdings, which acquired Riverside Apartments 3 years ago from the family trust. The room fills with confused murmurs. My father's face flushes red while my mother turns pale as porcelain. That's impossible, Valerie stammers, her manicured fingers gripping the edge of the table. I would have known if the building had been sold. Carver calmly slides the deed across the polished table. All transactions were completed legally. Your grandmother ensured every document was properly filed with the county recorder's office. This can't be legal, Valerie protests, her voice rising. Mother would never allow this. Grandma Eleanor made sure I could protect what mattered, I reply, locking eyes with her. The building. The tenants. Her legacy. Rachel, my cousin, examines the documents closely, her accounting background helping her understand the situation instantly. These appear legitimate, she confirms. Ms. Wells owns Riverside through an LLC, Carver explains evenly, which means that any rent adjustments or eviction notices must have her authorization as the legal owner. Valerie sinks into her chair, her tailored jacket suddenly looking too large. The control she once had over me, the property, and the family narrative starts to crumble. There must be some mistake, my father murmurs. No mistake, Carver replies firmly. Just thoughtful planning by Eleanor Wells to ensure her wishes were honored. The family gathering erupts into chaos. My aunts whispering in corners, uncles scrolling frantically through their phones, and cousins reevaluating loyalties on the spot. Valerie remains motionless, her lawyer's mind already calculating her next move. Later, as we drive home, Mrs. Simmons squeezes my hand, her eyes glistening. Eleanor would be proud, she says softly. She always said you had strength. You just needed to find it. Back at Riverside, the tenants gather in the lobby as news spreads. Mr. Garcia from 4A brings his homemade sangria. The Johnsons arrive with a warm casserole. Even quiet Mr. Watson joins in. Is it true? Mrs. Peterson asks, her arthritic hands trembling. You own the building now? I've owned it for 3 years, I explain, still adjusting to the truth myself. Their relief is visible, years of worry melting away from tired faces. Valerie told us last month they were turning the place into condos, Mrs. Johnson admits. Said we should start looking elsewhere. Mr. Garcia nods. She ignored my repair requests and said the property wasn't worth fixing. One by one, the tenants share stories of Valerie's neglect and manipulation, her cold indifference to their concerns. Each confession strengthens my resolve. Carver stands quietly, sipping Mr. Garcia's sangria. As the crowd disperses, he approaches me. This is only the beginning, he says. Eleanor left you more than you realize. I watch the tenants return to their apartments. No longer just residents, but a community Eleanor spent years nurturing. For the first time, I understand what she meant when she said that connection holds more value than control. But beneath my calm, a thought lingers. Valerie won't give up easily. Even now, she's likely strategizing with her firm, planning her counterattack. Should I act now, pushing forward while momentum is mine? Or prepare for the inevitable fight ahead? Mrs. Simmons seems to sense my hesitation. Don't rush, she advises. Eleanor always believed that patience wins the strongest battles. Tonight was just the first move. I nod, fully understanding. What happened tonight wasn't an ending. It was a beginning. 3 days later, I sit at Carver's antique mahogany desk, surrounded by neatly ordered files. The memory of revealing my ownership and Valerie's stunned expression still lingers. Satisfaction flickers, but I push it aside. It's meaningless unless I can secure lasting protection for my tenants. We need to anticipate every possible legal move Valerie might make, Carver says, passing me another folder. Your sister isn't just a lawyer, she's strategic, and she won't back down easily. I run my fingers over the embossed seal of Stonebridge Holdings, feeling the weight of responsibility and legacy it represents. I keep waiting to feel something more. Triumphant, maybe, but all I can think about is what comes next. Carver's gray eyebrows rise slightly. That's exactly the right mindset, Miranda. Complacency is how people lose what they've earned. I spend hours reviewing property management laws and LLC guidelines, writing careful notes in Grandma Eleanor's worn leather journal. The familiar scent of its pages steadies me as I outline Valerie's possible countermoves. Whenever my thoughts drift toward celebration, I steer them back to preparation. Look at this, I say, sliding a financial statement across the desk. Valerie has been collecting rent under Riverside Management for 3 years. Even though the property is legally owned by Stonebridge Holdings, Carver adjusts his glasses. That's not just deceptive, it could be fraudulent. I open my laptop and create a spreadsheet to track every maintenance request that went unanswered under Valerie's management. Each ignored leak and postponed repair becomes a data point in a clear pattern of neglect that reduced the building's value while boosting short-term profits. I'm not doing this for revenge, I tell Carver, though a small part of me questions that. I'm doing it because I need to understand what she's done, to protect myself from what she might do next. Treat this like a business plan, not a family dispute, Carver advises. Your grandmother knew that difference, and it kept her strong. The next morning, Mrs. Simmons arrives at my apartment with a thick manila folder. Her silver hair glints in the light as she hands it to me with a steady grip that defies her 72 years, 15 signed tenant. Statements, she says, documenting ignored maintenance requests, rent hikes without proper notice, and Valerie's dismissive responses to their concerns. I add them to our growing body of evidence. Did anyone refuse to give a statement? I ask. Only the Davidsons and 3C, she replies. They're afraid of retaliation. We'll protect them, I assure her. That afternoon, I walk through the building with my phone, taking photos of water stains on the laundry room ceiling, cracked lobby tiles, and rusted basement pipes long overdue for replacement. Each image captures proof of Valerie's negligence while she collected fees that never funded real repairs. Back home, I dig into financial records that reveal something worse than neglect. Maintenance funds from Riverside Apartments had been quietly redirected into an account labeled Management Overhead to Eleanor's. Records trace nearly $83,000, meant for improvements, diverted into Valerie's personal spending. My doorbell breaks my focus. When I open it, my parents stand there, faces marked by that familiar mix of concern and disappointment that takes me straight back to childhood. You're tearing this family apart, my mother says, stepping inside uninvited. Her pearl earrings glimmer as she surveys the document-strewn table. Valerie has always protected us, she insists. My father nods, hands deep in his pockets. Your sister says you're threatening legal action. Is that true? The realization hits. Valerie's already shaping the story, painting me as the one destroying family peace instead of the one defending what's right. Did she mention she diverted over $80,000 in maintenance funds for personal use? I ask quietly. My mother's gaze drifts away. Business is complicated, Miranda. Valerie understands these things better than I do? I finish for her. That's what you've always believed, isn't it? No matter what's right in front of you. Something tightens in my chest as I accept the truth. My parents may never see what Valerie's really done, or how deeply she's exploited everyone around her, including them. After they leave, promising to talk some sense into me, I return to my spreadsheets with renewed focus. Losing their approval hurts, but not as much as surrendering to Valerie's manipulation would. Truth matters more than approval, I whisper, finally understanding Eleanor's words in full. I organize another file of evidence, preparing for the confrontation I now know is unavoidable. The next morning, I sit at Carver's desk, carefully arranging folders into 3 neat stacks. The left holds financial documents exposing Valerie's questionable transfers. The center contains tenant statements describing ignored maintenance requests. The right stack presents ownership papers confirming my authority over Riverside Apartments through Stonebridge Holdings, LLC. How are we looking? Carver asks, stepping in with 2 steaming mugs. The scent of dark roast fills the wood-paneled office. Everything's ready, I reply, accepting the mug with a nod. Tenant notices are drafted, financial records secured, and improvement plans finalized. My voice is steadier than it was a week ago when Valerie appeared at my door with that envelope. Carver settles into his leather chair, the sound of the material stretching under his weight. Your grandmother would be proud, he says. This isn't only about keeping a building, Miranda. It's about preserving a legacy. I trace my finger along Eleanor's handwritten notes. Her graceful penmanship outlines every safeguard she built to protect what she valued most. Valerie believes this is about money, Carver says, tapping a pen on his notepad. That's her mistake. She can't fight what she doesn't understand. As the afternoon sun stretches shadows across the office, we continue our work. Mrs. Simmons calls twice to update us on the tenant meeting she's organizing. Mr. Peterson volunteers to testify about how I personally repaired his plumbing when Valerie refused to send help. Even the Johnsons from the 3rd floor submit written complaints about strange management fees that appeared after she took control. We're preparing for a full conflict. Not just a small dispute, I tell Carver while we file each document. The methodical work steadies me. Every paper strengthens the foundation of our case. My phone buzzes. Mrs. Simmons. Her name brings a smile. But it fades as I read the message. Someone from your sister's law firm just served me papers, accusing me of violating building policy for organizing tenant meetings. The coffee suddenly tastes bitter. Valerie is now targeting Mrs. Simmons. Carver reads the message over my shoulder, his brows tightening. A classic intimidation tactic. He mutters. Attack the allies to isolate the main opponent. I clench my fists. I should confront Valerie now. This goes too far. That's exactly what she wants, Carver cautions. Every impulsive move reveals part of your strategy. Be patient. I pace across the hardwood floor. Mrs. Simmons is 72. She shouldn't have to deal with this. The phone rings again. It's her. I answer immediately. Don't you worry about those papers, dear, she says before I can speak. Her calm tone reflects a lifetime of experience. Eleanor faced worse when developers tried to push her out in the 80s. You shouldn't have to, but you will endure. She wants you to react emotionally, Mrs. Simmons adds. Don't give her that satisfaction. I've seen worse than a legal notice. I close my eyes and take a deep breath. What do you need from me? Nothing yet. Just follow the plan. Eleanor knew this day would come. She prepared you for it. After ending the call, I notice Carver watching me, approval in his eyes. Your sister's making a serious error, he says. She thinks this is about property. You know it's about people. We spend the rest of the afternoon refining our strategy. If Valerie is willing to target Mrs. Simmons, others could be next. We create protections for all tenants, especially seniors and those with limited income. When the streetlights flicker outside Carver's window, we finally stop. My back aches from hours of review, and my eyes sting from reading fine print. But for the first time since this began, I feel ready. We have everything we need, Carver says, closing the last folder. Now it's time to take control. I grab my coat, realizing how much I've changed in just a few days. The woman who once trembled at Valerie's doorstep feels like someone else entirely. This isn't just about me anymore, I say quietly. It never was. Mrs. Simmons waits on her porch when I get home, her silver hair shining in the porch light. She holds her favorite teapot gently in her hands. Eleanor knew this day would come, she says as I step up the porch stairs. You're ready. Her calm certainty steadies me. The confidence built from Grandma Eleanor's careful planning, Carver's strategic advice, and Mrs. Simmons's unwavering support grounds me like solid rock beneath my feet. On Monday, Valerie will learn what happens when silence becomes strength. I tap my pen against the stack of tenant applications, but the rhythm doesn't ease my nerves. Morning light filters through the apartment windows, catching dust floating in the air. It's been 3 quiet days since the confrontation at my parents' house. 3 days believing I had finally regained control. My phone vibrates on the coffee table. Carver's name appears on the screen. A knot forms in my stomach as I answer. Miranda, he says. Valerie just filed an emergency motion in county court. His voice carries a tension I haven't heard before. She's challenging the LLC formation, claiming Eleanor was mentally unfit when she transferred ownership. My coffee suddenly tastes bitter. That's ridiculous, I say. Grandma was sharp until the very end. It's a clever tactic, Carver replies. She's questioning Eleanor's mental state during the period the documents were signed. If the judge grants temporary relief, you could lose control of everything while the case drags on. I rest my forehead against the cool glass. How serious is this? The Register printed an interview with her this morning, he says. She's framing herself as the victim, just trying to protect the family assets from Eleanor's supposed mistake. I close my eyes. Let me guess. Mom and Dad are supporting her? Front page photo of all 3 of them. Looking properly concerned, Carver says bitterly, Your father told the paper they only want what's best for both their daughters. My pulse quickens. Valerie scheduled a press conference for tomorrow afternoon to address the community. I try to steady my breathing, in, out. What happens next? Judge Harmon set an emergency hearing for 9 a.m. tomorrow, Carver says. One ruling could undo everything we've worked for. My hands tremble as I grab my laptop and open my email. The court notice is at the top of my inbox, formal and cold. Valerie called me last night, I tell Carver. She said she's been protecting this family for years while I've done nothing. That it's time I stopped playing games. This isn't a game, Carver says firmly. It's a desperate act from someone who knows she's losing ground. A knock interrupts us. Through the peephole, I see my parents in the hallway. My father's face carries the same stern look I've known since childhood. I have to go, I tell Carver. My parents are here. Remember, he says quickly, everything we planned for is happening now. Stay focused. Another knock. I take a breath and open the door. Miranda, my father says, stepping in without waiting for permission. My mother follows, scanning the room with her usual mix of judgment and disappointment. This has gone far enough, she says. What has? I ask, keeping my tone calm. This childish defiance, my mother replies. Valerie has managed the family properties for years. She knows what she's doing. Just let your sister handle it. She always has. Her words sting, familiar and dismissive. I notice my father's eyes drift to the folder on the coffee table labeled Riverside Financial Records. 2020-2024. Several neighbors stopped me at the store yesterday, my mother adds. They're wondering if you're being fair to your sister. Think about how this looks. The warning is clear. Community pressure, public judgment, the weight of appearances, the same tools they've always used to control me. I have an emergency hearing tomorrow morning, I say, refusing to engage with their attempts to manipulate me. I need time to prepare. My father rests a hand on my shoulder. His cologne carries notes of cedar and disappointment. Miranda, be reasonable, he says. Your sister has connections and resources. This could end badly for you. When they finally leave, insisting they hope I come to my senses, I sink onto the couch. My phone buzzes again, a message from Mrs. Simmons. Come down for tea when you're ready. 20 minutes later, I'm seated at her kitchen table, surrounded by photos of her grandchildren and the faint aroma of cinnamon. She pours tea from her mother's floral pot as I outline Valerie's legal strategy. Eleanor anticipated this, Mrs. Simmons says, offering a plate of shortbread cookies. That's why she had you keep detailed records of every repair, every conversation. Carver says we have everything we need, I respond. But Valerie's entire career is built on winning cases like this. Mrs. Simmons squeezes my hand. I've already called 12 tenants who've lived here more than 5 years. They'll all be at the courthouse tomorrow morning. Character witnesses for Eleanor's state of mind. My phone lights up with a text from Carver. Counter motion filed. Judge Harmon requested all financial records from the past 48 months. Remember what Eleanor always said? Mrs. Simmons adds. Patience wins more than power. I've spent my whole life being patient, I say, setting my teacup down. It hasn't worked out well for me. She studies me over her glasses. There's a difference between waiting passively and preparing strategically. Eleanor taught you that difference. That's why she chose you, not Valerie. By evening, my living room has turned into a command center. Carver arrives with boxes of financial records and court precedents. 3 tenants drop by with written statements about Eleanor in her final years. Valerie plans to argue undue influence. Carver shows me how to organize the papers into precise stacks. She'll claim Eleanor was vulnerable because of age and isolation. She'll paint you as opportunistic, Carver explains. Which is exactly what she is, Mrs. Simmons mutters. The judge needs to see the pattern. I spread maintenance requests from the past 5 years across the table. This shows how Valerie neglected repairs while taking the funds and how Eleanor documented everything. My phone rings again, my parents. I silence it without answering. Tomorrow will determine everything, Carver says, checking his watch. We should review your testimony once more. Near midnight, long after Carver has gone home, Mrs. Simmons stays. She sits on my couch, needlework in hand. The gentle click of her knitting is a soothing counterpoint to my anxiety. You need sleep, she says softly. Tomorrow we show them what real family means. I nod, but instead of heading to my bedroom, I pull out an old photo album. The leather cover is worn smooth from years of handling. I find the picture I'm looking for. Eleanor and me on the rooftop watching a sunset. I was 12, gangly and serious. She had her arm around my shoulders. I knew even then, Mrs. Simmons says, peering over my shoulder. Eleanor built this case for 3 years before she passed. Every document, every witness statement, every financial record. She knew exactly what Valerie would do. I'm not just fighting for myself anymore, I whisper, tracing Eleanor's face in the photograph. It's for Mrs. Peterson, who can't afford to relocate. For Mr. Garcia and his grandson. For everyone Valerie would discard for profit. Mrs. Simmons sets aside her knitting. Eleanor always said that you understood what truly mattered about Riverside. That it's more than just property. It's people's homes. I place the photograph atop my court documents. I hope I make you proud tomorrow, Grandma. Outside my window, the city lights flicker against the dark. Tomorrow morning, Judge Harmon will hear both sides. Tomorrow, everything changes, one way or another. I take a deep breath and review my testimony one last time. The next morning, I grip the edge of the wooden table, knuckles white, as Judge Harriman adjusts her glasses. The courtroom hums with anticipation. Every seat is filled, a sea of faces from Riverside Apartments. Mrs. Peterson with her cane, the Johnsons holding hands in the third row, Mr. Garcia with a determined expression. Valerie sits across the aisle, spine straight in her charcoal suit, her attorney shuffling papers with practiced efficiency. My parents sit directly behind her, my father's arm protectively around my mother's shoulders. They haven't looked at me once. Mrs. Simmons reaches over, patting my hand. Breathe, dear, she whispers. Lawrence Carver arranges his notes methodically beside me. Remember what we discussed. Let the evidence speak. The bailiff calls the court to order, and Judge Harriman begins. This is an emergency hearing regarding ownership and management rights of Riverside Apartments. I understand time-sensitive matters are at stake. Valerie's attorney rises, James Preston from her firm's litigation department. His voice is measured and authoritative. Your Honor, we contend that Stonebridge Holdings LLC was established under questionable circumstances. Mrs. Eleanor Wells was 82 and in declining health when these documents were executed. Medical records show she was taking prescription medications that could affect judgment. He presents documents to the court with precision. Additionally, Miranda Wells has limited business experience and no legal training. Her grandmother was clearly under undue influence during a vulnerable period. My stomach tightens. They're questioning Grandma Eleanor's mental capacity, something she cherished deeply. I breathe slowly, remembering her voice. Patience outlasts power, Preston continues. The Wells family has managed these properties for decades. Valerie Wells Harrison has the expertise to maximize returns for all concerned. Financial records show she has increased property values by 23% through professional management. This last-minute claim by Miranda Wells threatens the financial security of the entire family. Judge Harriman turns to Carver. Your response, counselor? Carver rises deliberately. His movements are precise, his voice steady. Your Honor, I served as Eleanor Wells's attorney for 34 years. I was present when Stonebridge Holdings was formed and when Eleanor Wells transferred ownership of Riverside Apartments to that LLC. He lifts a video tablet. Rather than describe Eleanor's mental state, I'd like her to speak for herself. The courtroom quiets as Carver connects the tablet to the display. Eleanor appears, seated in her living room, the timestamp showing 3 weeks before her passing. Eleanor Marie Wells, being of sound mind and body, make this statement freely and without coercion, she begins. Her voice, softer than in her prime, still carries clarity and purpose. I wish to explain my decision regarding Riverside Apartments. She adjusts her glasses, the same gesture Judge Harriman had minutes earlier. I built this property 52 years ago with my husband, Charles. For decades, it has provided homes for working families and seniors on fixed incomes. My granddaughter Miranda has shown the commitment to continue this legacy. A tear escapes despite my effort to remain composed. Mrs. Simmons squeezes my hand. Eleanor continues. I am transferring ownership to Stonebridge Holdings, LLC, which Miranda will manage. I do this fully aware of my actions and their consequences. The video shows her answering Carver's questions about her decision. Her responses are clear and detailed. When it concludes, the courtroom is silent. Carver produces a thick binder. We also have documentation of Eleanor Wells's medical evaluations, confirming her cognitive functions remained excellent until her passing. Her physician, Dr. Martha Coleman, is present and available to testify if necessary. He shifts to another exhibit. We also have detailed records of Riverside Apartments under Valerie Wells Harrison's management over the past 3 years. Financial statements indicate $83,000 allocated for building maintenance was diverted elsewhere. A murmur spreads through the courtroom. Valerie shifts uneasily in her seat. Carver slides another folder toward the judge, highlighting critical repairs repeatedly postponed despite tenant complaints. Mrs. Ruth Simmons has gathered statements from 17 tenants documenting deteriorating conditions under Valerie's management. At 72, she rises with surprising strength, clutching her own folder. Your Honor, I've lived at Riverside for 40 years. I knew Eleanor Wells as both landlord and friend. She trusted Miranda to preserve affordable housing for families and seniors. Under Valerie's management, our heat failed twice last winter, and 3 elderly tenants suffered respiratory infections. Valerie whispers urgently to Preston, who looks increasingly tense. Judge Harriman reviews the documents, expression unreadable. I'd like to hear from Miss Wells directly. My pulse quickens as I walk to the witness stand. The journey feels endless. Once sworn in, the judge asks, "Why do you believe you should maintain control of Riverside Apartments?" I glance at Valerie, then at my parents before responding. I'm not trying to punish anyone, Your Honor. I'm trying to protect what my grandmother built. Riverside isn't just an asset. It's a community where people have lived for decades. Miss Wells Harrison claims I lack the business skills to manage the property effectively. I've been managing it for 5 years, Your Honor, first assisting my grandmother, then running daily operations while Valerie handled finances. The tenants know me. I know which radiator knocks in winter and which doors stick in summer humidity. The questioning continues for nearly an hour. Preston Cross probes financial matters, seeking gaps in my knowledge. But Grandma Eleanor and Carver prepared me thoroughly. For each question, I present records, figures, and plans. After testimony concludes, Judge Harriman calls for closing arguments. Preston emphasizes Valerie's professional experience and the family's long-standing financial interest. Carver counters with Eleanor's clear intentions and records of mismanagement. The courtroom falls silent as the judge reviews her notes. Valerie maintains a composed expression, though her fingers tap nervously against her leather portfolio. Finally, Judge Harriman looks up. Having reviewed the evidence, I find the formation of Stonebridge Holdings LLC and the subsequent property transfer were properly executed by Eleanor Wells while fully competent. Financial records show management practices that were, at best, professionally questionable. The judge's gaze lands briefly on Valerie. This court upholds Miranda Wells' ownership and management rights of Riverside Apartments through Stonebridge Holdings, LLC. Relief floods through me. Carver places a steadying hand on my shoulder. The court orders a full accounting of Riverside's finances during Valerie Wells Harrison's management. Any misappropriated maintenance funds must be repaid to Stonebridge Holdings within 60 days. Any interference with Stonebridge operations will result in additional sanctions. Valerie's composure falters slightly. The gavel strikes. The sound reverberates through the courtroom and through me. Thank you, Your Honor, I say, voice steady despite the emotion swelling inside. As people rise, a man in a dark suit hands Preston a business card. I catch the words, Bar Association, before Carver guides me toward the exit. Mrs. Simmons embraces me, tears in her eyes. She's watching over you, dear. Eleanor would be so proud. Tenants congratulate us. Mr. Garcia pumps my hand. Mrs. Peterson taps her cane in approval. All these years of documentation paid off, Carver says, satisfaction in his voice. Eleanor knew exactly what she was doing. I glance at my parents, standing awkwardly on the edge of the celebration. My mother's expression wavers between confusion and dismay. My father stares at the floor. Behind them, Valerie consults Preston, her face carefully blank despite the loss. For a moment, I consider approaching them to reconcile. Instead, I turn back to the community, the people who trusted, supported, and believed in me when my own family wouldn't. This was never about revenge, I whisper to Mrs. Simmons. It was about the truth, she nods, understanding. The truth has a way of setting everything right in the end. Outside the courthouse, the sun breaks through morning clouds. Its warmth feels symbolic as I descend the steps with my real family, the one Grandma Eleanor helped me find. 6 months later, I stand in the renovated Riverside community room, watching Mrs. Simmons arrange flowers on the buffet table. Sunlight streams through new energy-efficient windows, highlighting the freshly painted walls. Miranda, where do you want the punch bowl? Mrs. Simmons asks, silver hair catching the light beside the cookies. I adjust the commemorative plaque we're unveiling, Eleanor Wells Community Room, where neighbors become family. Mr. Garcia from 3B enters carrying a homemade cake. Just like I promised, my mother's recipe to celebrate the new heating system, he says. My phone buzzes with a message from Lawrence Carver, now permanent legal counsel for Stonebridge Holdings. Court denied Valerie's final appeal. Congratulations, this chapter is officially closed. A weight lifts from my shoulders. Valerie's law firm placed her on leave after the trial revealed financial mismanagement. Last I heard, she took a position at a smaller firm across town. The phone rings again. It's my parents. After months of uneasy conversations, they've slowly begun to confront the reality of what happened. We're running late, my mother says, her voice carrying a new, cautious tone. Your father wanted to bring those photo albums you asked for. As I hang up, Mrs. Simmons appears at my side. You never wanted conflict, she says quietly. You only wanted fairness. I never imagined I'd succeed, I admit, straightening brochures for our tenant assistance program. She squeezes my hand. Eleanor knew you would. That's why she ensured you had everything you needed. I nod, recalling my grandmother's whispered words years ago. Your sister seeks power. You seek connection. Remember which one builds a legacy. 6 months later, the morning sun illuminates the community room. I stand confidently before the contractor team, reviewing renovation plans for the East Wing. My posture is firm, my voice steady as I question a proposed materials change. The specifications call for commercial-grade flooring in the hallways, I say, pointing to the blueprints. This alternative won't withstand daily traffic. The lead contractor, who initially directed his remarks to my male assistant, now meets my gaze directly. You're right, Ms. Wells. We'll follow the original plan. Later that morning, I take my coffee to the balcony of my new apartment, the suite where Grandma Eleanor once lived. From here, I can see Mrs. Peterson tending tomatoes in the garden while chatting with a young mother who recently moved in. The apartment waiting list now stretches to 37 names. Despite real estate pressures, I've kept rents affordable while steadily improving the building. My phone rings. It's Marissa, a young property manager, shadowing me. The bank approved the Hawkins family for the payment plan, just as you suggested. Excellent, I reply. Remember what I told you, a building is bricks. A community is people. In the afternoon, Mrs. Simmons finds me reviewing applications for our housing assistance program. "You're not just managing a building," she says, settling into the chair across from my desk. "You're creating a home." Eleanor would be proud. Through the window, I spot Valerie's car pulling up. Her designer clothes are replaced with something more understated. Her posture is less commanding. Our eyes meet briefly before she drives on. Perhaps there's a lesson in that glance. The seasons turn, marking 1 year since the court victory. I sit across from Thomas Jenkins, a widower facing eviction after medical bills depleted his savings. "Business is business," his landlord explains, shoulders slumped. The phrase echoes in my mind, Valerie's words from my eviction notice. I review his modest pension. "Riverside has a flexible payment plan for residents in transition. We can adjust your payments as your situation improves," I tell him. Hope flickers across his face. "I don't understand." Every other place turned me away. "Riverside operates differently," I explain. "My grandmother taught me property isn't just an asset on a balance sheet." That evening, during our monthly community gathering, I watched 3 families who might otherwise be homeless share a meal in our community room. The Eleanor Wells Community Fund, now directed by Mrs. Simmons, has helped 17 households find stable housing this year. Property owners from neighboring buildings mingle with tenants interested in our model. "Your grandmother's vision is spreading," Mrs. Simmons whispers. Compassionate housing with dignity. My parents stand near the dessert table, cautiously engaging with tenants they once dismissed. Our relationship remains formal, but the rigid silence between us has softened, leaving room for healing. As the gathering winds down, I climb to the rooftop garden. The sunset bathes the neighborhood in amber light, highlighting the small improvements that have transformed Riverside. Grandma Eleanor's voice seems to whisper on the breeze. Power without compassion is just control. I take a deep breath, at peace with my choices. When people show you who they are, believe them, but leave room for them to grow. That is the true legacy Grandma Eleanor left me, more valuable than any property deed.